Hello, welcome back to Scale to Exit with Alejandra Santos, your hostess with the mostest. And in today's episode, I have a very special guest. Her name is Edie Goldberg. She has an amazing career where she actually helps startups and Fortune 10 companies build their workforce. And she does it in a way that she uses agile strategies to make companies more adaptable. And she's also incorporating a lot of AI new technology. So I'm going to read you her bio. Okay, let me see. So Edie Goldberg is the founder and president of E.L. Goldberg and Associates. Her 35-year career spans industries and organizational life cycles, excelling at helping organizations to maximize individual and organizational performance. As a management consultant, business advisors, and board member, she has built a career catalyzing culture as a business value. So we dive in, given her expertise in leadership and organizational culture and performance. We dive in on a very important topics that every founder, business owner, entrepreneur, doesn't matter how you identify yourself, if you're listening in, you better listen and take notes because this is for you. The number one driver of revenue of a business. No, it's not your amazing product, believe it or not. It's not your amazing personality. It's not your location. It's your people, it's your culture, it's your team, it's how you lead them. So if you're listening in and if you want to build or scale your startup or your business wherever you are on your journey, you gotta implement the strategies that Edie Goldberg will share with you in a few minutes. She, let me just read to you her actually LinkedIn um, bio because she's amazing. She is the founder. Spoke about that one. Never mind. She is also the chair of the board for the SHRM Foundation, and she's a member of the board of advisors for the three HR technology companies. She advises tech startups, and she's also an investor in a VC fund. And her clients are from all industries and range from Fortune 10 companies to startups. So what she's sharing are some really good nuggets of information. And I want you guys to go right now, grab your notepad right now while and if you're driving, then let's do a mental note. If you're on YouTube watching, get your popcorn and your glass of wine or a beer, whatever you're into, and grab your notes because it's going to be a fun conversation packed with so much information. And I hope that you're really, 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 really going to put this information to work because this is what's going to move the needle in your business from making it a value multiplier or a value killer, like she says in the interview. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring Miss Edie Goldberg to the room and I will see you on the other side. Thank you for coming to Scale to Exit. I am so excited to have you here and learn about your amazing career journey that you have. I know you're founder and president of E.L. Goldberg and Associates, and you have dedicated your career to hire and retain employees and help startups and Fortune 10 companies do that. So we're gonna dive in into leadership. We're gonna dive in into best practices, and let's see where we go. But I'm interested to know what drive you to go into this direction in your life, in this career.
I'm so my background is I'm trained as an industrial and organizational psychologist.
Okay.
So kind of the study of work behavior and work motivation is kind of where my foundation comes from. But I've always been really, really driven to help individuals and organizations maximize organizational performance.
Mm.
So to help individuals be the best that they can be and to help organizations, drive the outcomes that will lead to great success. So that's kind of my personal mission where I come from. And that brings me here.
Oh, I love it. I love it because we know that people are the main driver for business value in any organization, no matter if you're a startup or a Fortune 10, it doesn't matter where you are. So, what is the secret sauce to making a strategic workplace planning agile?
Um, to make a strategic workplace agile. Um, Agile workforce strategies can kind of take a variety of different forms, right? You're going 5,000 miles a moment, you're growing at a rapid clip, and you need more and more talent. And, how do you get there ends out being the question for you.
Mhm.
And there are a variety of different strategies. We call them a buy strategy, a borrow strategy, a rent strategy, or a build strategy. So, for example, if your company needs to build a new capability really, really quickly, how do you do that? Hiring, it's what we all think of first. That's a buy talent strategy, but it's not always the best strategy. For one, it's super expensive to go out and buy new talent with the hottest skills in the marketplace. And it also might take a long time to find the right person.
Mhm.
So maybe there's a strategic business partner that you can collaborate with to borrow the talent. I've talked about this strategy in some other writing that I've done. And the best example I love is Siemens and Disney. Years ago, Siemens was building a uh, headset, hearing aid for children, but they had never built a medical device for children before. And they simply didn't know how to market to children.
Mhm.
And so the first thing they thought is, oh, maybe we should go out and try and find somebody to hire in marketing who's marketed to children. And
Mhm.
then they thought, well, it's just for a product. Do we really need to hire somebody for that?
Mhm.
Um, and then they thought, well, who is the world's best marketer to children
Mhm.
that we can turn to?
Mhm.
And it turns out, you guys all know the answer to that. The answer is Disney, right? Well, it turns out that at this time, Siemens, and still I think, Siemens and Disney had a strategic partnership. There's lots of cross stuff. If you ever watch Grey's Anatomy, right? All the medical equipment on Grey's Anatomy, Siemens equipment. You don't realize all the ways in which the companies are related.
Mhm.
Um, but what they did was they seconded a marketing employee from Disney and had them work on this project for Siemens for a short period of time. And it ended up being a huge win win for both companies. I could get into all the details of what they did, but ultimately, it was a strategy that allowed this marketing person to really leverage their deep expertise. It really, really worked for this hearing aid product, and it embedded within it some Disney stuff. So Disney, got a win out of it too. So it's a really great borrow example of how that can be done. But I realize that borrowing talent might not be the right fit for everybody because you might not have those kinds of strategic relationships. So maybe instead you can access talent that you need through on demand talent platforms like TalkTal or Guru or Catalent. And we call that a rent strategy. You're renting on demand talent for a short period of time to do a project that's important to you. Now, if you need to build a new capability in your company that you want to remain within the company for a long time, hiring a contractor is not a cost effective solution.
Mhm.
So perhaps you want to hire a consultant who
Mhm.
has the expressed assignment not only to bring that capability into your company, but also to train your existing staff in that new capability. And that would be kind of a build strategy. We're going to bring somebody in who has this expertise, and then we're going to infuse that expertise in a variety of people within the company and build up the talent that we need. So you have to determine here the various forces at play and whether you want to buy, borrow, rent, or build the talent that you need.
So I love that you said all those strategies because they apply to different stages. It can be applicable to different stages of a business, especially when it comes to like scaling from like a startup to like something more exitable, I would say. What would you say is that one of this from all the strategies that you shared, what have you seen it has been the one that increases more the value of a business? Because I know that team members and culture plays a big role in the value of a business. So if you are renting and if you're bringing a consultant, um ooh,
You're hitting on it, Alejandra. Exactly. If
yes.
you want to look at building the long term value for your company,
Mhm.
it's the build. You got to build that internal capability. You have to develop your talent. Focus on, you know, building those skills that make you unique within your organization, that specialized capability that you have where you can execute like nobody else. So, developing your talent is critical to creating greater value in the organization.
Yes, sorry about that. My microphone was going on and off, so thank
Sorry.
you for that. So basically, for like a company that's in the startup mode or scaling, you would say, maybe combine the strategies like at a point where can buy, you can have your consultant or someone that has been with you build your resources, your team from the bottom up. It could be more cost effective, and it also can increase the value of a business. Or it could be also combining the strategic partnership one, right, as well with your current resources, or also do some kind of internal processes as how good people did those and mimic those as well. Is that what I am hearing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, buying is what we think of, right? Hiring new talent. And at some point in time, particularly as you're scaling, you got to buy a lot of talent. I mean, that's the whole idea of growth, right? We're growing in headcount as well.
Mhm.
But sometimes it's really hard to find the capabilities that you need. And so, one of the biggest mistakes I see companies make is, they're holding on to this position. We're looking for that ideal unicorn person who's
Mhm.
got all these amazing skill sets that we really believe that we need, and stuff's not getting done. Well, in that case, you might want to rent some talent in the short term. Use an on demand talent platform where you can gain access to the capabilities that you need, maybe to get something done quickly while you're simultaneously building that capability yourself.
Okay.
So it's not a one or the other. They can all be going on at the same time, but the idea is to be really intentional about it and to use your money wisely, because using contractors is great if you need to do something really quickly.
Mhm.
And it's great if you want to make some progress while you're waiting to hire those people. But just hiring contract people doesn't build that capability inside,
Mhm.
and long term growth won't be there.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. And we're here to build valuable business, but I do love the diversification of strategies that can be put in place for a business at a very, from like to build a business and to continue scaling it at a low cost. What is something that you've seen businesses struggle when it comes to hiring? It's such a, hiring it's an interesting topic for everybody because if you don't have good people, then you don't have a business, right? It's really hard to have a business without good people. So what are some things that businesses struggle with hiring that you see, and what can they put in place to be more proactive in their hiring strategies?
Particularly, in an early stage of a company, there's a lot of lack of discipline that tends to happen. It's like we're moving fast and breaking things, right? So I would say the biggest issue that I see in hiring at that stage is not being really clear about both what you need from that person and really hiring for specific skills. No, in my gut, I love this person. They're awesome. But what are the capabilities you need that person to bring to the table? That's the most important thing. How have they demonstrated those skills in the past?
Mm-hmm.
But a little caveat here, the world of work is changing so quickly. Technology is changing so quickly. We need agile, curious learners. If you are hiring people who are solely focused on, I do one thing and I do this really well, but that's all I do, you're going to buy talent that may have a very short runway with your organization. So, yes, you want to hire for that specific talent and that capability that you need to get your business either off the ground or growing, but you also want curious, learning, agile people uh, who can grow with your company.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said. So hire people that stay curious is basically because it's such a dynamic world out there. And if you're not keeping up, somebody's keeping up for you and you're staying behind. So at a
Yeah,
stage,
I say my personal mantra is always be learning. And
mm-hmm,
I think, the most successful employees kind of have that mindset of they're curious, they're always trying to learn those new things that are coming along because our businesses are evolving rapidly.
and when it comes to hiring somebody in a higher role at a more mature level of a growth for a business, what are you think is that the biggest struggles that hiring at a higher role, at a higher level role comes with?
Um, Well, certainly, the vision of your CEO, your leader, and if you're hiring, onto the senior team, making sure that people are really aligned with that vision is really important. You don't want to, hire something that creates conflict early on.
Mm-hmm.
So a great leader surrounds themselves with great people who have different disciplines,
Mm-hmm.
different areas of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And a great leader isn't afraid to hire somebody who's better, smarter, faster, more capable in a particular area than they are, because you're trying to build this really amazing team around you.
Mm-hmm.
So you want that, those A players in their different disciplines, but
Mm-hmm.
they've got to be people who will collaborate across boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as being a really, really important point, but not being afraid to hire somebody who ultimately could be your replacement is, it, you're always trying to hire the best because that's what moves you forward.
And that's what it is, right? Like when it comes to business, you have to hire better than you. You don't want to be the best person in the room because otherwise you're doing it wrong. And I feel like there's a little bit of ego that goes in there in that
Yeah.
formation. Yeah.
One of the things that I've seen with particularly early stage CEOs is the most important things are self awareness and adaptability, because there's a very famous saying of what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah.
And I see so many companies, and I live in the heart of Silicon Valley, and I do a lot of work with startups. And so this issue of, a founder who can get a company to a certain point is really great. But to have the humility, the understanding of maybe what's going to take the company to the next step is a leader with different expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so that adaptability of being able to say, my skills, my expertise, my passion is better used in this part of the business. And I need to hire a great COO. I need to hire a great CEO, and I'm going to be the product person or whatever that is. Um, just the self-awareness to understand where your skill sets are best and what the company needs moving forward.
So, like, detach themselves from the company emotionally as well, because there's a lot of emotion that comes when to make a decision of like, I need to step back or step into another role to let someone else lead my baby, basically.
Yeah.
It's a big decision. So basically detach it, but it's a very smart one too, because you're looking at the big picture and you're acting like a leader that you're meant to be in order to lead your business to the next level. I like
Yeah.
how you said that.
Ultimately, the goal is to have a really, really successful company.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to be the thing that's standing in the way of that. And it is a really hard thing to do. But understanding how each individual plays to their strengths
Mm-hmm.
and what they need to surround them to make that company successful is really important.
And that brings me to my next question, since we're talking about leadership. Like, what are the key leadership differences between companies that scale successfully and those that do not?
Okay, so the first thing that we were just talking about is obviously one of those key things, right? Self-awareness and adaptability. Uh, the other is, it's a leader that has a really clear vision
Mm-hmm.
but can remain flexible. Like, this is where we're going, absolutely, but what's the data telling me? The ability to communicate your vision and bring everyone else along with you is really essential.
Okay.
But despite what, Steve Jobs might say, you have to listen to your customer and market feedback.
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to pivot when necessary. And I think in the last 5 years, we've just seen that kind of over and over again of all of a sudden new markets emerge or new technology emerges and companies have had to really significantly pivot. So have a really clear vision, be able to communicate that, but don't be so stuck on your vision that when you see the opportunity, when you hear your customers, be customer obsessed, and understand their needs and be flexible enough to pivot to where the puck is going, as they say. um, the other thing when I think of leadership and kind of people who are scaling their company to get ready to exit is the quality of operational discipline. uh, I've seen more than my share of startups who are literally allergic to the term process. They think that it is the antithesis of innovation, that you cannot be innovative if you have process that's too bureaucratic. It'll tie you down. It won't get you anywhere. But trust me, as it turns out, my husband happens to be a deep expert in product innovation. And he would be the first person to say the most innovative companies in the world, they have process. And that's what keeps them the most innovative companies in the world. And when you're thinking about, the name of this podcast, Scaling to Exit, if you don't have those operational processes in place, what is a buyer buying?
Mm-hmm.
You need to have your processes, I want to say locked down. And I don't mean that in the very bureaucratic, will never change sense, but you need to have good discipline that can scale, that can take you to the next stage, that can demonstrate the thoughtfulness and intention of the organization. So, these are leaders that know how to bring in structure, process, and metrics, but not without, choking off innovation, right? They're scaling intentionally. They're not just throwing a bunch of resources at the problem. They're they're intentionally building in a way of getting the right resources in place at the right time so that other parts of the business can then grow and catch up. So it's a very intentional, process-driven approach that really helps an organization grow.
You touched on a really good points. I love what you said about processes. They're not the most sexy ones. Nobody likes to do. Like, let me write an SOP here to step one. That is not a sexy thing to do, but it is needed and it allows you to scale effectively.
Yeah.
I love that you said about the vision. I think having a clear mind when you're a leader and sharing that with people also gives you the room to make really good decisions. Um, and then I love everything that you said. One thing that really stood up to me is the KPIs,
Hmm.
because a lot of businesses owners, even startups and business owners that have been in business for a while, don't really have access to that data that they should have, or the KPIs developed to really make informed decisions. What would be some KPIs that you recommend to founders and businesses, that they should really be looking at as they continue scaling?
This is obviously going to depend on what your business is and what you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to do. But, I'm like data queen. So metrics are so important. Obviously, customer acquisition, customer churn. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you have huge customer churn and you're not aware of that, and you think, oh, we're bringing all these people in the door as
Mm-hmm.
people are leaving out the other side,
Yeah.
you've got a leaky boat and that boat's going to sink.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be tracking the metrics that are so important to you. It's hits on a website, it's downloads, it's whatever those key metrics are for driving your business, um, to identify them and figure out a way to track them. I mean, today, so many companies have things like Google Analytics
Mm-hmm.
and different tools, but internally, you're going to have proprietary data that will tell you about the health of your company. But to proactively think about what are those metrics that are going to tell you if you're growing and if you're growing in a healthy way,
Mm-hmm.
and if that's sustainable. So
Mm-hmm.
year over year growth, obviously. Those are really important things to be looking at. Obviously, in the early stages,
Mm-hmm.
it's about hitting, product development deadlines and key milestones. So you might not even have customers, depending on how early stage you are in your product development. But, you know, really keeping an eye on how are you progressing towards that plan. Certainly that your investors, or if you're bootstrapped, still wherever you got that money, those people want a progress report about how you're doing.
All the KPIs that you said are very applicable, I think, to almost every business, like the customer acquisition cost, your lifetime per customer. Um, One that I really like a lot is the revenue per employee, which and it depends per industry as well, but to see how healthy your business is, how much revenue you're bringing per employee. Do you recommend any other ones when it comes to employment, to see if the business is driving health through retention?
Well, I look at things like employee turnover because that's really a sense of
Mm-hmm.
your culture, um,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of what's the value proposition that you're offering to your employees and whether or not they stay. Because there are some statistics about it can cost you 3x
Yeah.
to hire a highly skilled employee,
Yes.
3x their annual salary. And so if you're, turning these people over, that's very, very costly. On the other hand, when you have long tenured employees, we find that they're more productive because they have the relationships across the organization that really facilitate the connections that drive innovation, that move information forward, that connect other people who need to be connected. They really, if you will, grease the wheels of your organization. So focusing on tenure is an important metric for me. Most companies will look at things like time to hire, and if you have a really long time to hire, sometimes that's a hard skill set. And, people just don't want to, work for a company and they're working on their own terms. And so you can't hire them. That's when we turn to on-demand talent sometimes. But time to hire is a frequent one, and I would say turnover. I also spend a lot of my time looking at things around employee engagement and culture metrics to make sure that you have a healthy, thriving organization. It's really going to depend on how large your organization is as to whether or not you're going to get into those metrics. But employee engagement is uh, is significant related to organizational productivity. So when people are more engaged, your organization's more productive. So it is a really important metric to be aware of.
I'm interested to know from you, because I'm huge in culture. I think that culture is moves the needle of the biggest value in any company. But from you, what kind of culture have you seen that people thrive the most lately? I mean, there's so many different cultures, and for me, it's a collaborative one. But for some people, it's a little bit more structured. Yeah, but I'm interested to see what you're seeing out there.
Well, uh, I mean, culture has to be authentic to
Mm-hmm.
that organization.
Mm-hmm.
So every company, essentially has their own unique cultures. If it's a real strong, teamwork environment, you're going to have that team-based collaborative culture. And I agree with you. In fact, I've just in the process of writing a book around performance enablement, and I talk so much about the fact that today we track individual performance, but the truth of the matter is most of our work gets done in collaboration with other people, and we really should be looking at team performance rather than individual performance. I think collaboration, the data is something like there has been an 85% increase in collaboration over the last couple of years because our work processes are so complex that they require people from different disciplines to be working together to achieve company goals.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if that's the case, you want a collaborative culture. How you recognize and reward talent really plays into whether or not you're going to have that collaborative culture. It's like, what are all the little things that you do from a company process programs perspective that reinforce that culture that you want? The big thing I've been hearing a lot of people talk about, and this is going to be so important in the startup world, um, is trust and transparency, particularly as a company is going to exit.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really unclear time.
Yes.
It's a scary time for a lot of people. What's that new entity going to be like? What is my job? Are they going to keep me,
Mm-hmm.
etc.? But establishing trust early on, which means doing what you say you're going to do,
Mm-hmm.
being clear and honest and upfront with
Mm-hmm.
people, as upfront as you can be. Obviously, during a transaction, there are certain things that you can't talk about. Um, but uh, but building trust is something that you can do early on in the career, in the lifespan of your organization. But the transparency becomes increasingly important. Yes, you can't share everything when you're in this, scaling to exit time period, um, particularly the exit time period. But there's a lot that you can share. And, that going back to the vision for the company and, what we're trying to achieve here. That is so important. So trust and transparency being two of those huge cultural elements that really underlie when people are willing to give their all for a leader, it's because they trust them and they feel supported by that person.
And I love that you said that. I'm always telling my team, I'm here to support you. we
Mhm.
we support each other. We're talking about exits now. So you talked about trust and transparency along the way of building the culture, and also when exiting, they're so important to get your team aligned. What would be some steps that some companies need to take 2 to 3 years before an exit to prepare their team for like a smooth transition?
Yeah. There are a few critical areas that I would focus on as you kind of prepare and you start thinking about that transition. The first is, start really identifying where your institutional knowledge lives. Often it's in people's heads. You need to document those key workflows, your decision making processes, customer insights, and any kind of technical know how. Um, it, it not only ensures kind of continuity of the business as it goes through an exit, but it shows your buyers that the business isn't overly dependent on a single person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important. Also, and I've coached companies as they're kind of going through a huge maybe upswing in the business. Evaluate that leadership team and identify what kind of gaps you have as you look forward to kind of the next stage, the next evolution of your business. Are there people in a place that can lead at that next stage of growth, especially post exit? And start developing that next tier of leaders now. Do not wait. It takes time. So give your buyers confidence that your organization can thrive under new ownership because it has leaders who are prepared um, to really lead in that next stage. So, codifying your knowledge and processes, building that leadership bench, that's really, really important. And then the other thing, which is a little near and dear to my heart, is creating an agile talent strategy that focuses on the capabilities that you need to drive growth. It's not just about headcount.
Mm.
You have to map the skills your business needs to scale and be acquired, and then assess what you have, what you need, and where you can flex through contractors, maybe partners or internal mobility. It's really a shift from a jobs mindset to a
Mm-hmm.
skill set mindset, which helps you be more agile and flexible with the talent that you have,
Mm-hmm.
but it really focuses you on, I may not have the resources to hire a headcount to do X, Y, and Z. But as a company, to build to that, to where we're going, we need to create these capabilities. That gives you the opportunity to develop talent internally, to access, that kind of those talent strategies I talked in the beginning. But you have to think about what are those capabilities that you need to be building, and don't kind of confine yourself by thinking only in terms of headcount.
So that just throws everything in a different perspective on how to prepare the team to get them exit ready
Yeah.
just by developing those strategies. What is something that the business owners, what is the one critical workforce strategy that most business owners really ignore when they're preparing for an exit, but they shouldn't be ignoring?
Um, I think it goes to kind of what we were talking about with culture is the one thing that people kind of ignore.
Yeah.
It's a culture that's going to get you through that transition.
Okay.
So I think companies don't pay attention enough to the culture that they're creating. And often it just kind of evolves and emerges. Culture is simply a reflection of how people behave within an organization. And it's like what's acceptable, what's not acceptable within the organization. That's really what your culture is about. It's about what's valued and what's recognized and rewarded.
Mhm.
And if you don't pay attention to those things, bad actors come about, that can really negatively impact an organization. But I, I think really focusing on what's the brand that we built here? What's this culture? What is this legacy going to be known for as it kind of moves into its next phase? I think that a strong culture with a strong ethos around you know that product mindset of what you've built, that's what's going to carry you through to that next stage.
So we're talking about really good stuff. So the culture, you talk about the agile strategies that businesses should put in place before they transition into an exit. Can you expand more on the agile strategies? Because I think it's very interesting.
um, So, one of the biggest workforce related risks that business owners overlook when preparing for an exit
Mhm.
is an over reliance on key individuals.
Okay.
So often it's the founder or a handful of senior leaders that hold those critical relationships or
Mhm.
institutional knowledge or decision making authority. Now, your buyers will see that as a risk because if those people walk out the door post exit,
Mhm.
what's left behind might not be scalable or sustainable.
Mhm.
Another big risk might be talent continuity. Many business owners focus on the financials and the operations. They
Mhm.
neglect to assess whether or not the current workforce has that capability and the structure to scale
Mhm.
under new
Mhm.
ownership.
Mhm.
So we talked about, is there a solid leadership
Yeah.
bench? Are the roles and responsibilities really clearly defined? Particularly as you start to maybe merge with another organization. Do you have those documented processes and do cross-functional teams, can they really operate independently of any one person that is, so they really understand how they operate together? Um, the issues that we've talked about with culture and engagement um, during a sale, uh, that when that uncertainty is running high, you can run the risk of having a huge talent exodus at the exact moment where continuity is the most important. So the strategies of um, of honing that culture ends out being really important. Like, how are you going to get those people to stay
Mhm.
who have no interest in working for a bigger company?
Mhm.
But they're like the difference makers in your organization. And you have to start to think about what kind of strategies can we put in place to mitigate the risks of these people leaving.
Mhm.
Buyers are not just acquiring your products or your customers,
Mhm.
they're acquiring your people.
Mhm.
So, a strong, scalable, and well aligned workforce can actually be a value multiplier. And if you neglect it, it's a value killer.
I love that you just said that. Value multiplier or a value killer. Do you have any stories about the workforce just, you don't have to say companies or anything, but just leaving after a transition and how that turned out for that transition and the value of the business? Did the transition even happen?
I mean, I've certainly seen it where that situation that I talked about of a company I was involved working with, and they got acquired by a much larger organization. And the head of product was just like, I'm not a big company guy. I have no interest in working for that new entity. And so, I mean, literally the heart and soul of the product. And they didn't foresee that and put any talent strategies in place to, I hate to use the term golden handcuffs, but there are financial tools that we can use to encourage people to stay where they might not want to stay, at least through a transition period. And those are really important. Um, that's a kind of a common thing that I have seen of where people just really don't want to be with a new entity.
And that's very unfortunate for the buyer and for the seller, because they, like you said, they lose value. The seller loses value, and the buyer, why would the buyer buy a company and then rehire everybody to do
Yeah,
the same thing?
and I've certainly seen the flip side, which is where companies are being bought essentially just for their talent, not for their product. And the company plans on, squashing the product, but it's that amazing talent. And then what they, offer to these employees is a much bigger platform to do what they wanted to do, and the resources to really scale. And that's also very exciting
Yeah.
to an employee who's really passionate about the work that they do. So it doesn't have to be that negative situation. I've seen it be absolutely brilliant. And, that's sometimes in the case where a company is being acquired for the people that they have.
And you said a key word here, motivation, because I feel like keeping your team motivated, because everybody has an individual motivation, like so different than one another, is so hard to do. Within your experience, how do you motivate your team since everybody's so different?
Well, a one size fits all strategy does not fit anybody.
Yes.
You need to understand each of your employees, what drives them, how they like to be recognized, how they like to be rewarded,
Mhm.
and kind of what are the most important things to them.
Mhm.
I think, a strategy I call job crafting, which is understanding what is this person really, really great at, and what drives their passion, and modify what they do in their role so that they can lean more into those things that get them excited, make them more productive. Because that experience of being in flow, when you're like working on something and you're so immersed in it, you lose all track of time.
Yes.
When that happens, you're really, really productive. My goal in life is to get people to be constantly in flow, because it's the greatest high, if you will, in the entire world. It's like I'm on fire. I'm working on this. It's great. I'm just I'm creating, or I'm executing, whatever it is. Um, and that's when people are at their best.
Mhm.
And so I think of trying to understand, how do we help people be at their best, and then eliminate parts of their role that bring them down. This is one of the things I'm super excited. Sorry, everything has to turn to AI. But one of the reasons I'm really excited about AI is because it can help eliminate some of the drudgery work
Mhm.
that we just inevitably have to do as part of our job,
Mhm.
and allow us to lean into those parts of our work where we are uniquely humanly capable and that we enjoy the most. And if we can craft our jobs, if we can think about how do we motivate each individual to be the best that they can be, to produce the most for our organization, it's really about understanding them individually and helping them do the work that is important to them and recognizing them in a way that works.
I love what you said. Yeah. And I mean, sometimes in a dynamic environment, you're doing so many things at the same time. So, like, really figuring out what they thrive to be at, right? Especially
Mhm.
when you're scaling and you're creating more definition in your roles. So, if you like to do these things out of all that 100 else that you do, maybe we will give the other 99 to someone
Yeah.
else just to keep them valuable. I love our conversation, Eddie, and I know you have some books, one coming up. I already know that you wrote one as well. What's next in your career, and what trends in workplace planning are you most excited about?
Well, so I'm a talent strategy and future of work expert. So I plan on continuing to help companies transform how they work and how to manage their talent to best meet the needs of their business. Like everybody else, I'm most excited about AI and how it can transform our work and our workplaces. So I've been leaning in a lot to understanding kind of the best practices about how do I help companies implement AI to improve both performance and productivity. I strongly believe that AI can lead us to great prosperity for everybody and create a more delightful workplace. And so that's my goal is to figure out how to make that happen for more companies.
I love that. Wow. So when you're not when you're not impacting the workforce and leading your organization and being part of this amazing ventures or writing a book, what are you doing in your free time?
What free time, so I advise tech companies. I consult, I do a lot of keynote speaking, I'm an author. There's not a lot of free time, but with that said, I'm deeply passionate about wine, so much so that during COVID I became a certified specialist of wine.
Oh, I love that.
um, so I belong to a lot of learning wine groups where we taste and discuss, where we try and do blind tastings, learn a lot of stuff like that. That's fun for me. I travel. I just came back from a trip to South America, which was really fascinating. Um, and I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, so hiking and biking and all of that to keep us healthy and happy.
You all of the things that I like: wine, hiking, and traveling. I love it. But also the work. I love the work that we do so much that it doesn't feel like work. So I'm always working, just like you. Yes,
Yeah.
and spreading the message. So have I? So from here, from this conversation, did I? Is there something that I didn't ask you that you want to touch on before we leave?
No, I would just say, if anything that I've said, hits anybody's boat, and you want to reach out, you can find me easily on LinkedIn, Edie Goldberg, um, or on my website, www.elgoldberg.com. And I'm just excited to, I live in that world of Silicon Valley and lots of startups, and I'm an investor, and in a venture capital fund. So I think everything that everyone's doing here is really important and exciting. And I hope this has been helpful.
I love that. And I do have one more question before we leave, but I will place all of the links, your LinkedIn and your website and everything in the show notes so people can
Great.
definitely reach out to you. But before we leave, for founders and business owners listening today, what actionable steps can they take right now, this week, to start building an exit ready workforce?
Ooh, big question. I think it's about creating an adaptable workforce. How do you recognize and reward that curiosity and that initiative? Are you transparent with your employees about your vision for the future and what role they can play in that success, and what it could mean for them, good or bad? Everyone wants to know what's in it for me. Don't leave your employees guessing. You've got to spell it out. So if the one thing is really help your employees to be more adaptable, because let's face it, business is changing on a dime today. And we have to be ready to jump on that next opportunity. But employees need to understand what's in it for them.
And it could be a value multiplier or a value killer,
There
right?
you go.
Yes, I love it. Well, thank you so much, Ed, for coming with us here at Scale to Exit. I love everything that we talked about, and it's going to resonate with everybody. I learned so much, and I will put everything on the notes. And for everybody there out listening, thank you, muchachos. Hasta la vista. Bye.